Greetings all, Ferrari Man 601 here. Welcome back to another 1/18th scale model car review of this, the 2018 Ferrari SF71H, rendered in 1/18th scale by BBR, as driven by Kimi Räikkönen in the 2018 Formula One World Championship. As of the time of this recording, this is the last Ferrari ever to win a Formula One Grand Prix, in the hands of Kimi Räikkönen, no less. COTA, Circuit of the Americas, United States Grand Prix 2018, the last victory to date for Ferrari, and it's most likely to be the last Grand Prix win for Kimi Räikkönen. Therefore, we had to get this model. In terms of what this is the single-seater fielded by Ferrari in 2018. It was designed by Mattia Binotto as technical director. He's now team principal at Ferrari. Preceded by the SF70H of 2017, succeeded by the SF90 of 2019. The wheelbase, 3,714 millimeters. The engine in this thing is the 1.6-liter single-turbo V6 with the hybrid KERS powertrain. It's the Ferrari Type 062 Evo. It's a V6, turbocharged, revs to 15,000 RPM according to the rules. In reality, it only revs to about 11.8. The electric motor, the hybrid system in there, it's Ferrari designed and manufactured a KERS MGU-K and MGU-H system. Gearbox, 8-speed plus reverse semi-automatic paddle shift. Overall weight, 733 kilograms. Fuel provided by Shell and their V-Power branding. Lubricants also provided by Shell. Brakes by Brembo. Big ventilated cross-drilled carbon-carbon rotors and pads there. Tires, Pirelli. The P0 for the dry compounds and the Cinturato for the wet weather compounds. In 2018, the car raced for Scuderia Ferrari. It was driven by Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen. Entered 21 races, won 6 of them. Took 24 total podium positions, 6 pole positions, and 4 fastest laps. Second in the Constructors' Championship, only to Mercedes and, of course, Lewis Hamilton. Let's take a look at this model. My acquisition of this model comes a little bit more than a year after I got the SF70H of 2017. That model was the first one I ever got by BBR, and at that time I was absolutely blown away by the level of detail and the overall quality on this car. And it's the same here on the 2018 71H. Again, we mentioned the technical specs, and clearly here, just visually, you can see the visual resemblance that you have in this car versus the 70H, so obviously the 71H, an evolution thereof. But as we mentioned in the competition history, it was a very good car, and of course it is still, as of the time of recording this, the last Formula One Ferrari to win a Grand Prix. And of course, Kimi Räikkönen, the 2018 United States Grand Prix at COTA, it's probably going to be his last Formula One win, which means really I had to get this car. There was absolutely no question. As soon as Kimi crossed the line at COTA, I knew that when this model came out, I absolutely had to get it. Kimi Räikkönen won the first Formula One race that I ever sat down and made a point to see, and that's probably the last time we're ever going to see Kimi win a Grand Prix. So this car absolutely has to be there for me. It's just, it has personal value in that regard as well, but in terms of the actual value that it's got in terms of being the model that it is, BBR, of course, we're getting used to these guys doing absolutely fantastic jobs on these late model Formula One cars, and this one really is no exception. It's the first model I have that features Halo. Of course, Halo was introduced for all of the Formula One cars beginning in 2018. And a lot of us were at the time and are still pretty critical of the Halo in terms of its aesthetic value or utter lack of aesthetic value, but there is the Halo system on the 71H as we see it there. It does pretty significantly hinder our view into the cockpit. However, as far as the driver is concerned, it doesn't do all that much in terms of visual obstructions. But more importantly, it does add a great deal of crash protection in terms of objects entering the cockpit, or if the car rolls over or gets into a barrier at a weird angle, it does protect the driver's head from being impacted by debris and trackside objects. So anything really that does improve the safety aspects from the driver's point of view, it's a good idea. And of course, in more recent months, we've seen that IndyCar is going for a similar solution, a little bit more comprehensive a solution than Halo in their aero screen idea. But the overall structure of even the IndyCar aero screen is very similar to that of Halo that we see in Formula One nowadays. And again, we began to see Halo in 2018. The overall details on this car, though, aside from the halo, everything else on this thing looks absolutely glorious. Just looking at the aero details there on the barge board area as the front wing comes around, look at how intricately modeled all of that is on the front wing of this car. And we'll take a closer look a little bit later on at some of these components and sub-miniature presentation. But just overall, looking at everything, you can see the reflectivity of the paint as the car is spinning around here. They have not really overlooked any major detail on the car. It more or less represents the 71H as it appeared at the beginning of the season, so some of the aero updates are not present that you would have seen later on, certainly by the time COTA rolled around and Kimi won the US Grand Prix. But you see the great reflections coming off of the paintwork. It's very crisp and very clear. You get decent general aero detail, the turning vanes there on the side pods coming around, the barge board detail there in the front. I like the multi-tone paint effect there, especially across the front of the monocoque. Of course, the car is predominantly red, but you have the black carbon section separated from the upper red section by that silver stripe, which basically continues down the entire length of the car. And of course, you do have a slight amount of white on the vestigial shark fin there on the engine cover, supplemented by Kimi's race number 7, as well as the colors of the Italian flag. Very nicely done by BBR, and of course you also get all the great sponsorship decals, which of course are more or less 100% authentic. You don't have the Nissan Winnow branding on this model that Ferrari started to introduce toward the tail end of 2018, and they're still continuing to run at some events, at least in 2019. That, of course, trade and dress regulations for tobacco advertising, because the legislation regarding all of that varies around the world, so better safe than sorry, don't even bother to include it at all. And that is generally the default treatment of any sort of tobacco or even alcohol sponsorship on most scale models that you will find on sale today. Very rare to find something from the factory with a tobacco livery on it. But nonetheless, there it is, the overall spin around flyby view of the 71H. Let's take a little bit of a closer look now at some of the more intricate areas on the car. We'll stop the rotation and take a little bit of a closer look at things like the front wing, the barge boards, the rear wing, and all of that goodness. Now, coming down, taking a look at the front wing detail on the 71H. There it is as it comes into frame. Very intricate front wing designs in 2018, and they were so intricate that they actually became the subject of the 2019 aerodynamic revisions, which we're still seeing the effects of now. The effectiveness, the efficacy of those revisions, a little bit inconclusive still as we're halfway through 2019 as of recording this. But here we can see on the front wing we have got absolutely fantastic levels of detail from BBR. First off, what we see here is we've got the nose tip, the thumbnail nose that Ferrari's been running for a long time now, I believe going back to 2016. And of course we saw this in 17 and here on the 18 car, that same thumbnail nose going on there, splitting the airflow in two as it hits the front end of the chassis. And on either side of the nose, we have the main plane of the front wing. There it is. You can see we have multiple elements here on the main plane of the wing itself. And as we go outboard on the wing, you can see that we have multiple strakes there, just trying to sculpt the airflow, trying to create the outwash effects that we talked about so much of in 2017 and 2018, and the 2019 aero regulations trying to control the level of outwash that the teams are creating. But you can see there on the main plane of the wing, we have got multiple different elements, and not quite sure if they're quite countable here. But I am showing that we have got, let's see, main plane down there, 1, 2, 3, 4 elements there on the red section of bodywork, and on the black section, which is behind this cascade element, seems to be another 4 individual flap elements in there. Moving outboard on the cascade element itself, we have got an additional 1, 2, 3, 4 cascades proper. And then we have got ourselves a little bit of an outwash end fence here as we get to the extreme outboard angle of the wing. Down below here, vortex generator, that inverted U channel that we've seen so much of. And then below all of that, we have got another little face of the wing coming into the cascade element down there at the bottom. So that's pretty interesting, I must say. And then, of course, we turn up again and we head toward the main plane through the neutral section of the wing there in that delta profile that we've seen so much of. The other side of the wing, of course, more or less identical to what we saw on what was car left, screen right for us. And, of course, yeah, mirroring everything as much as you can there with your wing design on both sides of the car. Very cool. We can see here the suspension arrangement on the front end, double wishbone push rod arrangement, just as we've seen on all Formula One cars for quite a while now. Moving outboard, you can see that we have got the brake duct detail right through there. Very nice. And then, of course, the Pirelli tire detail there as we move outboard on the car. And, of course, all of that is mostly mirrored on the other side, as you would expect. Getting a little bit closer in to the nose section proper, you can see here that we have got ourselves excellent sponsor graphics there, if we can focus. And there we go. Yes. There's our sponsor decals there, the Italian flag coming down to the nose tip, the Ferrari logo, and then, of course, we have got our sponsor decals there, Shell, AMD, Kaspersky, etc. And, of course, Kimi's number there, number 7 on the nose. Very cool. Moving up a little bit more on the car, you can see that we have got ourselves pitot tubes and things like that as we head up to the top section of the monocoque. We also have an outlet for the S-duct that is fed through the bottom of the nose, basically through here. As the air splits between the left and right sections of the nose there, bifurcated by the nose tip, it's picked up by a little duct underneath. It comes up through the wing and then it is shot out the top. Very cool, and of course BBR doing a pretty decent job in bringing all of that detail to us. Taking a look now at the right-hand side of the car, lots of little aero appendages going on as you would expect on a modern Formula One car. First of all, just take a look at the level of complexity of the barge board detail going on in this area. I think we are ever so slightly too close to get a proper focus on it, but just have a look at how amazingly complicated all of this is and the absolute level of obsessiveness that BBR have used in trying to recreate this as best as possible. You can see here we have got a little metallic section right there. That is just a bracket, a stay, just holding some of the principal barge board elements in place in this section of the picture. But it's absolutely nuts to see the level of detail not only BBR getting into, but Ferrari in general, and the Ferrari was not at all unique in this regard. All of the teams had absolutely ridiculous front-end aero treatments, such as life in modern-day Formula One. So, again, everything on these cars is worked in the wind tunnel in CFD simulations, just trying to figure out if there is an advantage to be had, and if there is, how do you have it? Moving rearward a little bit, we have got the turning vane detail here on the extreme outboard part of the side pod right through here. You can see that we have got ourselves a cut in this section of bodywork coming around, making a little box around the box that is in the Lenovo logo area there. Again, just trying to split the airflow around the side pods. Some of it is going to be fed into the side pods right up here, and then some of it's going to be fed between the turning vane and the side pod to attach itself to the Coke bottle section. Some of it still is going to be pushed outboard, trying to lessen the effects of the tire wake there on the rear section of the car. So very cool there. Looking down at the floor section here, here is the lower section of barge board and then the reference plane area. There's a little bit of an upturn in the reference plane right here, and we've been seeing this on Formula One cars for quite a few years now. It just seems to be a way to keep the airflow entrained to the side pod lower profile there. Reference plane continues toward the rear zone of the car, where in recent years these cars have really started to get extremely svelte in these areas. Again, all of this empty floor space to play with here, and the more space that you have, the more air you can ram into the rear zone and then feed the top side of the diffuser with that air. So again, important to have economy of space in this era where we can't really have advantages in terms of the engine development side. We can't go testing. We can't do a whole bunch of things that would ultimately do a lot of good for the sport. But where you can find advantages is in the overall design of your aerodynamic package. So that's what Ferrari and all the other teams are trying to do. Here on the front end, this is the right front wheel and tire assembly, and you can see BBR doing wonderful things with their wheel and tire detail. And you can see there we have got ourselves the wheel in there, the magnesium alloy wheel. Just trying to get everything focused back up. It's not really working so well. There we go. Wonderful detail on the wheel nut in the center there. You can see the OZ decals going inside the interface of the rim. We have got the brake assembly in there, the brake disc and caliper visible. We have also got, of course, the Pirelli P0 tire, and you can see some sidewall lettering in there. I can't quite read it here on the camera screen. It's a little bit too small. I'm not sure if that's going to be legible on the final video either, but there is very clearly lettering and numbering that is embossed into the tire sidewall on this car, and that really is fantastic attention to detail. And bet you anything, we pan over to this side on the rear tire, and there it is. Yet again, more lettering there embossed into the sidewall, and again, maybe that will be legible. But again, more wheel and tire detail there. Inside the rim, you can see the wheel nut and then the brake caliper and the brake disc back there. Really, really cool stuff. Now taking a look at the rear side of the car, the rear zone. There's our rear wing, of course, in there, and the very large general rear zone on this car, dominated by the rear tire detail, but also, as we get some light in there, you can see the absolutely great diffuser detail in there as well, in the under tray that BBR have managed to get in. You can see the carbon work on the diffuser is so thin, it's so small, but you can see it's multiple layers in there, and it's almost like sheets of paper, really. You can see I've even got a little bit of motion in there induced by my finger, but the air is just being shot through here, almost like through sets of a razor blade almost. It'd be coming out of here at extremely high pressure, but it would have a very thin area through which it's expanding, so you'd get some interesting flow phenomena going on there. That's some pretty space age type stuff, I must say. More conventionally, we have got the vertical strakes coming down from the top of the diffuser down toward the ground. And then, of course, you've got your neutral center section with the step plane in there for legality reasons. The rear suspension on the 71H, here's our upper wishbone in this area here, the lower wishbone, and then our pull rod. So a pull rod rear on the Ferrari, and again, we have seen pull rod rear suspensions on basically all the Formula One cars for several years now. Our rear wing end fences, here it is, this same general shape that we've seen on all the cars since 2016. Also on this model, the DRS flap does articulate, so we can open the DRS like this if we want to, or we just press down on it and it closes. So it's pretty fragile, but it does work. You do have operable DRS on this model, just as we had on the SF70H of 2017, and I believe the 16H also had operable DRS in the BBR model version of that. I don't know if they made a 15 or a 14, but I know that they made the 16 and it had DRS that was operable as well. So that's pretty cool stuff. Additionally, in the rear zone, you can see that we do have some brake duct detail, the cascade elements in the brake ducts we could see through there. Very cool on each side, so all of that's plainly visible. And of course, we have our exhaust outlets, that center exhaust outlet there, and then the two wastegate outlets for the turbo wastegate exhaust. So very cool. Basically, it's a homologated location for the exhaust. They have some liberty in terms of where they can put the wastegate exhaust, but the main turbine exhaust out for the engine exhaust going through the compressor stage of the turbo and the drive stage of the turbo has to be dead center, basically, between, should they choose to run them, these two struts helping to support the rear wing and to carry the hydraulic lines for the DRS pod. And the wastegates exhaust, we've seen teams put them in more or less this position here, one on each side. We've seen them stack them on top of each other down the center line of the car. We've seen them offset them a little bit upward, trying to send a little bit of charged air, blown air toward the rear wing. But more or less, we don't really have any variation in Formula One design anymore with this regard. Makes me a little bit sad, but that is what the rules makers have decided to do in this modern era. Getting a little bit closer of a look at the car now as it spins around in front of us. Again, just a little bit closer in to see some of the more intricate details here. Just want to show you some of the other aero details on this that are a little bit harder to divine initially. And there we go. You can see there in the rear section, there is the turning vane and the T-wing in this area here. T-wings, they were used in conjunction, and there it is on the 71H. They were used in conjunction with the shark fins that we saw in 2017, and they would extend from the top of the engine cover all the way out to the rear wing. They were banned in 2018 simply because enough Twitter people said they looked ugly, so the FIA said they're banned, even though they actually made the cars faster, easier to drive, and in my opinion, more dramatic looking. Therefore, the shark fins were banned, and those T-wings that we saw on the shark fins were kind of retained to some extent, to the extent that they actually could be per the letter of the law. And there they were on the rear zone of the car, right there just ahead of the rear wing, and there it is again on the 71H. Additionally, heading toward the rear zone, here is another angle on the floor space that Ferrari had to deal with here, and you can see just how much of it there is. And again, the more air you can get into this zone of the car, that's more interaction you can get with the diffuser through the pull rod geometry there on the rear suspension. And even, it's really difficult to see because I can't really get it lit properly, but you can see there's just a little stay in the floor, just holding the floor to the center line of the car there, just to get a little bit more bracing in that area. And again, trying to light it as best I can. Really cool to see that level of detail here from BBR. Very, very nice. Again, that they don't overlook little things like that, because it is little things like that that just generally add to the overall sense of authenticity in a model. And again, it's really cool, and people who spot things like that definitely appreciate them when they do spot them. Now, just trying to take a look at the car from above, you can see the overall proportions, you can see the wheelbase, the relative sizes of the wings, you can see that delta profile on the front wing. Really want to take a look at the cockpit area on this car, because it is a little bit obscured initially by where the halo is and just generally how that works, but there it is. There's our cockpit, there's Kimi Räikkönen's helmet, all of the sponsorship on the helmet done very nicely, and again, just trying to get the light in there because halo does make it a little bit more difficult now to see the cockpit detail. But there's Kimi's helmet, authentic sponsorship graphics on that thing, and if we can get the light in the right space, you can even see, there we go, you can see the steering wheel detail. The steering wheel on this car is extremely well detailed, and although the steering is not functional, the wheels are fixed in a straight ahead position, it's made up for by the fact that the steering wheel has legible decals on it. And again, simply because the angles that we have here to play with and the way I have to try and get the lighting in there, I'm not sure that any of that is going to be legible on the video, but the steering is fixed, but the steering wheel is legible. So all the little Manettino switches in there, all the labels, they're actually legible, believe it or not. You can try to pause the video here and see if you can make anything out. I'll be rendering this ultimately in 4K, but again, it's legible, and it's absolutely ridiculous that they would make something like that legible. Also really interesting on the Ferrari, and this was again something that started in 2017, was the absolutely paper-thin letterbox side pod inlets that they made on these cars. And there they are again on the 71H. The 70H had a similar design, not quite as extreme as this, but still pretty extreme. Here, that inboard duct is basically the only entrance that they have for the radiators. It's absolutely crazy. Obviously, having a V6 engine, it doesn't have the same sort of cooling requirements as a V8 or a V10, but it's still generating a lot of heat, particularly because it is turbocharged. And as we all know, when you compress air, it gets hotter. So you still have quite significant amounts of heat management that you have to do on a car like this. How Ferrari managed to make this thing reliable and competitive with having that as the radiator opening is pretty remarkable. Just like on the SF70H, we also had an additional duct here running on the top side, and there you go. There's actually carbon detail running through that duct as well. I'm not quite sure if you can see it in there, but there is carbon detailing through there. And additionally to that, mirror fairings here. On some later updates, the car had the mirrors affixed to the halo itself, but the FIA ultimately said no to that. So here it was at launch spec with the mirrors in a conventional location on the side of the monocoque there in the cockpit surround. And you can see how the mirror fairings are designed to help pull air through the mirror fairing and then to attach itself into that upper duct on the radiator on the side pod there. So that's really cool. In terms of halo, rather than only complain about it, let's complain about it, but also show you some decent modeling work that BBR did on it. There it is. It's got the Ferrari logo on the center stay there in the center, just like you would expect. And then the upper section of halo, you can see that they have got that little winglet there, that little vane, just trying to clean up some of the airflow around this very large and very unaerodynamic device that they're forced to put over the cockpit now. Just trying to condition the air for the intake snorkel there for the engine, as well as trying to cut down on any buffeting that would be introduced by this central stay of halo, which would actually induce some very severe turbulence that would actually cause the driver some distress at high speed, because if you've ever watched a car antenna run back and forth, oscillating in a high-speed flow, the same thing would happen to the driver's helmet as the air is forced to go around this roughly cylindrical profile of the halo center stay. So again, they're just trying to induce some different flow dynamics around the top side to lessen the effects of that. So again, still very much a work in progress is halo, but there it is for 2018 at least. More sponsorship graphics on the cockpit surround. There's the Ferrari shield. We've got some more sponsorship. We've got Shell. We've got the emergency kill switch, and we have Kimi Raikkonen's name there. The inner surface of halo, we have got a carbon fiber weave. That looks authentic as well. Really cool. Really, really cool. Great bolt hole decals along the front section of the monocoque through the vanity panel. There is our duct for the exit flow of the S duct running down through the wing. There's the front side of the wing with those McLaren style fences there. Just, I guess you could even call them pre-barge boards coming off the side of the nose. Down through the bottom is the duct that feeds the S duct, so it enters through here and it exits up there. Pitot arrays, antennas, that black bulge you can see there, that is the 360-degree camera that's mounted on the monocoque there, the front end of all the Formula One cars now. Status lights for the MGU system. That would be red if the car is not safe to touch, green if it is. And then the emergency clutch for the marshals or the driver to hit if the car is stranded, the neutral button there. Back side of the steering wheel, really difficult to see most of this now, but there it is, and you can see the paddles there on the back of the steering wheel, as well as a quick releases modeled and the steering column. Very cool to see all of that. And then again, moving rearward on the car. There is the quadrifoglio, the four-leaf clover there. That's a nod to Ferrari's Alfa Romeo connections there. The quadrifoglio was, and still is, a badge that Alfa Romeo only put on their premier models. And of course, Ferrari following suit there, because I'd say a Formula One car is a premier model. And your contingency sponsors here down on the side there, the lower side of the side pod. Very cool to see all of this. Nice carbon detailing around the gearbox casing. And then again, that nice silver paint on the lower side of the car delineating the upper and lower sections. I like the reflectivity of all of that. On the back side, here's the rear crash structure. You can see that we have got the temperature sensitive stickers, the witness mark stickers there for recording the maximum temperature experienced by that particular part of the car. And then we have got the exhaust
pipes coming down through here as well, looking very, very nice. Finished in that bronzed sort of finish. Looks nice. There's our T-wing, our swan neck pylons supporting the rear wing, and there is the rear wing DRS actuation pod. Very cool. Rear wing end fences, some pretty sharp angles in here and harsh geometries, but the overall swept back profile visible there. And then we've got multiple vanes, gills cut into the upper profile there, just to help any air spill over so that we don't stall the wing when we're at full downforce. Very nice overall. Great work has been done on this model inside and out by BBR, and generally very, very pleased with all of that.
All in all, the SF71H by BBR, as we've come to expect from these guys, they've done an absolutely fantastic job with the craftsmanship on this model. Being somewhat limited as it is in terms of the ability to have accessible opening and functioning features, simply because it is a late model Formula One car and the teams are not exactly forthcoming with a lot of their capabilities and very intricate details in those kinds of areas, so no removable bodywork or anything like that. But just like on the SF70H and the 16H of 2016, you've got yourself the movable DRS flap, which I think is a really cool detail to have on a model like this. It does give you some different display options if you want, but really the overall quality of this thing, it's reasonably heavy. The entire chassis is done in die cast. Of course, the wing elements are done in plastic, as you would expect, but the halo is actually in die cast, and of course the main body of the car is as well. The whole area, including the front nose, the cockpit area, the engine cover, the side pods, all of that in die cast. So definitely you've got very high quality. Steering does not operate, unfortunately, but you get great cockpit detail in compensation for that. Great tire textures on there. The slick tires are modeled very nicely. You've got the embossed lettering that we looked at in the tire sidewalls as well. And ultimately, you've got Kimi Räikkönen's last Ferrari. It's most likely to be his last race-winning car. And again, as we mentioned at the beginning, this to this date is still Ferrari's last Grand Prix winner. So perhaps that's a little bit of a dubious distinction. Hopefully that changes sometime in the not-too-distant future. However, be that as it may, it's Kimi Räikkönen's last Ferrari. It's probably going to be his last Formula One winner, so it's definitely a model with a great provenance and subject matter. So if you were considering one, those are your reasons to get it, and perhaps your reasons not to get it as well. But I think the pros far outweigh the cons on this one. Until next time, though, hope you all enjoyed. Ferrari Man 601 saying thank you for watching, and of course, we will see you soon.